So I want to talk about the failed assassination attempt of Andrew Jackson. Okay. So as you can see, that is Andrew Jackson, and that is his assassin, who we will learn about shortly. Andrew Jackson saying you failed, and the assassin saying I did. How did that happen? Let's find out. Who is Andrew Jackson? Does anybody in the audience know who Andrew Jackson is?
Yeah!
Okay. President. What number president was he?
26.
26, good guess. Anybody else? 7, thank you. So, he was the 7th U.S. president. From 1829 to, it's very important to me, from 1829 to 1837. We can count it. Let's count them. That's 1, George Washington. 2, John Adams. 3, Thomas Jefferson. 4, James Madison, James Monroe, John Quincy Adams, and number 7 over there. Bonus points. Who knows what picture this is of if the faces were removed?
Breakfast Club.
Oh, that's a good guess, but that's also wrong. Menudo, good guess. A-Team, okay, all good 80s references. Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. Yeah, look how great they are. Anyway, so some people look at Andrew Jackson as a hero. What do you guys think? Do you think he's a hero? Do you think he's a villain? How do you guys look at him? Yeah, today he's generally considered an asshole. Hence all the red in the photo. It's like hell. It's like he's the devil. Yeah, not a great guy. Why was he not a great guy? Well, here's something called the Trail of Tears. If you guys have not heard of it, it's basically American settlers wanted the federal government to expel Native Americans from the Southeast. So Jackson supported this, and he got congressional support, and he signed the Indian Removal Act in 1830. This allowed the government to exchange Native American land for new Indian colonization zones out west. Basically, the Native Americans said, well, we don't really want to move. We shouldn't have to, makes sense. But the army came in and said, you're going to move. And so they led them on a trail of tears, where about 4,000 Native Americans died. One of the guys who will come up later in the story is Davy Crockett, who was a frontiersman, but also a congressman at the time, who was a political enemy of Jackson's. Here's him saying it's an awful idea. Jackson was also a wealthy slave trader. By the time of his death, Jackson owned 161 slaves. And when one of Jackson's slaves escaped his property, he offered a $50 reward and a $10 for every 100 lashes a person would give to that slave. So really, I can understand if you hate him as a person. We don't like him. Here's the other side of him, and this is not supporting him as a hero, but saying this guy survived a lot. There's a lot of information here. He was born during the Revolutionary War. His father died 3 weeks before he was born. His brother died of heat stroke. Then in 1781, him and his brother were captured by British officers, and the British officers slashed him across the face with a sword after he refused to polish his boots. So this left emotional scars and literal scars. Both not good things. So him and his brother both contracted smallpox while they were imprisoned, and then another brother died. So basically, his whole family is wiped out. Then his mom died, and by the age of 14, he was completely alone. So, again, I'm not asking you to pity him because he was pretty much an asshole throughout his life, but this is kind of sad too. He worked his way up and became a lawyer, and then he became a national hero in the War of 1812. Can anyone describe the War of 1812 for us? Yeah. It's very easily forgettable. Basically, essentially, the Americans fought the British.
They burned the White House down.
That's right. Thank you. The British, I think, with the help of Canadians. Is that correct? I should know. We should all research War of 1812 after this. He wound up winning the presidency in 1828, and this leads us to our first story here. So contemporaries describe Jackson, who had already served in Tennessee Senate at the time of this duel I'm going to discuss, as physically violent and fond of dueling to solve conflicts. Not a great thing to solve conflicts. Any of you guys duel anybody? Cool, yeah, don't do that. So this is Charles Dickinson.
You described Johnny Block,
I don't know what he's saying. Don't know what you're saying. So Charles Dickinson is a man who dueled Andrew Jackson in the early 1800s. You cannot really find any real pictures of him, so I went to Google, and Google gave me this image, so he's going to serve as our temporary Charles Dickinson. Sorry, whatever this is in real life. And this is the actual Charles Dickinson portrait of him, or painting of him. He died in the early 1800s, so there's no photographs. So he's saying, I'm Charles Dickinson, a master duelist, not Charles Dickens. And Jackson's saying, you're Charles Dickens. He says, you fool. Charles Dickens was born in 1812. It's not even 1807 yet. You're Charles Dickens. Duel. So that's not what happened. I just really wanted to do that. Here's what actually happened. Jackson and Dickinson were rival horse breeders, and Dickinson accused Jackson of reneging on horseback, calling Jackson a coward and an equivocator. Essentially, a major thing that happened. So Jackson's reaction, all right, you want to call me, that's fine. So another key part of this is Andrew Jackson was married. His wife, she was already previously married at the time that he married her. So his wife was separating from her ex-husband, who was a pretty bad guy. But it was known around town that Andrew Jackson had already married this person, even though they hadn't officially divorced. So then he says, your wife is a bigamist.
Hold up.
He's not happy about this at all. So he actually said this. He said, I hope for your courage will be an ample security to me that it will obtain speedily the satisfaction due to me for insults offered. This is what he actually wrote in the letter to Charles Dickinson. So on May 30th, 1806, the two men dueled. Charles Dickinson was one of the best, marksmen out there. So it's a big deal that Jackson was deciding to duel him. So they met. Dickinson shot first. So basically they met, and Andrew Jackson, the gunshots keep going off. They met, and essentially Dickinson pulled out his, they're just gonna keep going. Jackson essentially said, I'm gonna let you shoot first. So he let Dickinson pull a gun out and shoot him. And this is what's going on in the background. So that's a little drama happening behind me. So Jackson was shot and he was bleeding, very much in pain. But he shot back and killed Charles Dickinson. Yeah, this happened. Gunshots are going off. So he won the duel, and as he's saying right here, I just won the duel by taking a bullet that will remain in my chest for the rest of my life. My ribs were also broken, but I won. Yeah. So good for him. Now we know the type of guy Andrew Jackson is. He's insane. So we want to now bring up the crux of this presentation, which is Richard Lawrence. Who is Richard Lawrence? Well, he's another example of a guy you cannot find online. So I thought, well, the best way to do this is there's Richard Gere and Lawrence O'Donnell. So I combine their faces, and it's that the eyes and nose are Richard Gere and the jaw is Lawrence O'Donnell, and it ended up looking like Ryan Stiles or Bill Maher. I don't know why. So as you can see, Richard Lawrence says, I'm Richard Lawrence, and I'm an unstable house painter who sort of looks like Bill Maher or Ryan Stiles. He was an unstable house painter. He painted houses. That was his job. Here's his co-worker. I work with Richard, and though he seems unstable, he's a hell of a painter and conversationalist. Did you say conservationist? Conversationist. So why was Richard Lawrence unstable? We've already declared that he's unstable. Why is he unstable? Well, first off, he thought he was King Richard III, 15th century King of England. He genuinely thought this. He was delusional. So this is, again, Richard Gere's eyes, Lawrence O'Donnell's jaw. He's looking in the mirror, and he sees Richard III. So Richard III is concerned. His co-worker's concerned. And Andrew Jackson's concerned, but he's also tough, so he's not very concerned. Why else was Richard Lawrence unstable? he thought the American colonies, which no longer existed at this point, owed him money. So he felt that killing Andrew Jackson would actually get him money, get him his due. Let's see. So he thought he was entitled to payment from American colonies, and that Jackson had prevented him from receiving the money because he opposed reauthorizing the charter for the Second Bank of the United States. So, thank you to Jen at Chestnut Grove Academy for the picture. Okay, so, January 30th, 1835, Andrew Jackson is president. What happened on this day? Well, he was attending the funeral of a representative named Warren Davis. He was a former South Carolina representative named Warren R. Davis, and so it was a dreary day outside, and by this point Jackson's in his 60s and he's very frail. So Richard Lawrence, who's very unstable, decided, I'm going to go to this funeral and do what I need to do. So he hid behind a pillar, and there's Andrew Jackson. So Andrew Jackson, as I mentioned before, Davy Crockett was a political enemy of Jackson's, but he was attending the funeral of Jackson. As you can see, he's wearing a tie over his frontiersman outfit, so he's really representing himself well. So they're leaving the funeral, and here's their conversation. You know, Jackson's like, where's South Carolina Representative Warren Davis? He really was a South Carolina representative. And Davy Crockett said, yes, he was. Nice cap, by the way. I didn't notice it before. So he's saying, Davy Crockett's saying thank you, but he's also really hurt inside because he never really notices, and he's not happy. So what happened? So Dickinson hid behind a pillar and decided he would pop out in front of the two gentlemen and attempt to shoot him. Now we have the other perspective. So he pulls out a Derringer and shoots. Jackson's alarmed, but the gun misfires. So essentially the gun goes off but doesn't do anything.
Hold up.
Jackson is not happy. Not a happy guy. Oh shit! So Richard Lawrence is frightened because the thing that was supposed to work didn't work. And Andrew Jackson, you know what he has with him? He doesn't have a gun. He has a cane. And this cane is going to be very important to the story. Richard Lawrence pulls out another Derringer, and the second Derringer misfires. So Andrew Jackson has his cane with him, and he's not taking this. Man, he's a very old, frail man at this point. So he begins to beat him down with his cane. And he actually said this. He said, because Davy Crockett tried to restrain him, other congressmen tried to restrain him. He said, "Let me alone. Let me alone. I know where this came from." So what did that mean? So Jackson was convinced that Lawrence had been hired by the Whig Party opponents to assassinate him. At the time, Jackson's Democrats and the Whigs were locked in a battle over Jackson's attempt to dismantle the bank. So Jackson was convinced that political enemies had hired Richard Lawrence for this. At the end of the day, it was not true. That is another sketch. That was not mine. But what actually? So as you can tell, Jackson is clearly the one in position of power here. So what happened after that? Does anyone know who this is? It's not. So that is Francis Scott Key. He's a handsome man. So he is the creator. He wrote the Star Spangled Banner during the War of 1812, but he was also a prosecutor. So during Richard Lawrence's trial, he was the prosecutor for the case. So you can see the jury there and see Richard Lawrence. Essentially, he was prosecuted, and then Richard Lawrence said this in his trial. He said, "It is for me, gentlemen, to pass judgment on you, and not you upon me." 5 minutes later, how do you think he was? What do you think the verdict was? Not guilty. Guilty. Both good guesses. Okay, so we have all the jurors. They're all thinking. Not guilty by reason of insanity. He was found not guilty. And so Francis Scott Key is like, all right, cool. So guys, I wrote this song. And they say, we know, we've heard it. We know it's Star Spangled Banner. And he's saying, all right, well, I see. Well, my second cousin 3 times removed is going to be F. Scott Fitzgerald, we also know. That is his relative. So how does this all end? So he was tried not guilty by reason of insanity. Richard Lawrence spent the rest of his days in a mental institution. and he was there until his death in 1861. Andrew Jackson, for the rest of his life, he had the bullet in his body, lodged in his chest near his lung and heart. It doesn't feel good. He died very frail with a lot of health problems, which is for another presentation. He also is still on the $20 bill, which is probably not a good thing, so we should try to fix that. A very interesting postscript, though. It seems that divine intervention is involved here in some way. These researchers, clearly wearing their uniforms, the researcher cowboy hats, essentially these derringers that misfired, the two of them that misfired, when they were tested by researchers later, they both went off successfully, like there were no problems with them. So it's seemingly there was some divine intervention to save Andrew Jackson's life. They said the odds of this happening, of them both misfiring and not killing Jackson, was 125,000 to 1. So it's insane that Andrew Jackson lived through that and lived the entire life that he did, because he lived very recklessly. Thanks very much, guys. That is the conclusion.